Famed Democratic socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez apparently owes around $2,000 in unpaid taxes over a defunct business she had years and years ago. Now, that in and of itself is not news. People often find they owe taxes, fees, things pop up. I remember a couple of years ago, I got a letter in the mail that I owed taxes. I was like, what is this for? I don't even remember this. But you know what? Some things get reported, some things you miss. Sometimes this happens. I've been caught off guard. I just pay my taxes. I got no problem, okay? We can complain about where taxes go and stuff, and there's an argument around there. But what makes the story interesting is that it's Ocasio-Cortez specifically, and that she is a Democratic socialist who is apparently trying to avoid paying these taxes. Now, that's kind of weird. First, according to the story, it seems she fundamentally misunderstands why she owes the money. Apparently, the state of New York, I believe, issued a warrant to the business over the unpaid taxes. I don't know what ultimately will happen to AOC, but she is saying that the business has been defunct for years, so I shouldn't have to pay her, something like that. It's a funny argument, and I want to get into the misunderstanding about the misunderstanding people like her have about tax loopholes and about paying taxes. But I'll give you the gist of it. I won't bury this. A lot of people like her argue like Amazon's not paying any taxes and like technically fair, but you got to specify what taxes they're not paying. What AOC misunderstands is, and many of these progressives, is that most of these businesses are paying the legal taxes they're supposed to be paying. If you want Amazon to pay more in taxes, then argue they shouldn't be entitled or they have to be charged more. They're paying the taxes they legally have to pay. Well, AOC, you legally have to pay these taxes. Oh, but you're challenging it. I could argue you're trying to use a tax loophole, arguing for this, that, and this reason, you're not responsible for the taxes because you don't think you should have to pay it, just like any other business. One thing that's really interesting, what makes it even more interesting, is how the Daily Mail unearthed this video from her in 2012 where she was complaining about new businesses being taxed. Ah, yes, sing me the sad, sad song, AOC. Well, let's read the story. And then there's another bit of news in AOC related news that I guess I'll get to, mostly because I think, look, her primary is coming up in about a month and a half. She might actually lose her seat. We'll see. There's a lot of questions. We don't know for sure. But apparently, according to the New York Post, fellow New York Democrats are avoiding Ocasio-Cortez as they plan coronavirus relief. We'll come to this story, but let's get started talking about taxes and what's going on with AOC and her not wanting to pay. She doesn't want to pay her fair share, apparently. AOC owes $2,000 in unpaid taxes from failed business venture. The New York Post reports, U.S. Rep. Ocasio-Cortez wants to raise taxes on the rich but not pay her own. The Democratic Socialist Congresswoman from the Bronx still hasn't paid a 7-year-old tax bill left over from a failed business venture. Now, I'll stop here. I'll be fair to AOC, make a couple points. For one, she wants to tax the rich, billionaires. You're not making a real argument when you're arguing that she should be paying more in taxes when she's specifically singling out billionaires. Let's keep it honest. We can poke holes in her ideology without trying to argue that she should be taxed more. The better question is, when she points to businesses saying they're not paying their fair share, well, neither is she. That's the bigger point. So let's read a little bit more. AOC had founded Brook Avenue Press, a publishing house that sought designers, artists, and writers from urban areas to help paint the Bronx in a positive way in children's stories in 2012. As the Post previously reported, public records show the state dissolved the company in October 2016. The state can make such a move when a business fails to pay corporate taxes or file a return. The state tax department then filed a warrant against her now defunct business on July 6, 2017. Over a $1,618.36 unpaid bill. As of Friday, the tax warrant had still not been satisfied, and the outstanding balance had grown to $2,088.78, the department said. Quote, she just thinks she's better than everyone else. Clearly, she's worse. Hank Scheinkoff, spokesman for AOC's chief June primary race component, Michele Caruso Cabrera, told the Post. But Ocasio-Cortez's camp says the rep is challenging the $2,088.78 bill because it was issued in error. This is where it's funny because she really doesn't get it. The bill is 7 years old, according to the Post. Maybe they're wrong, but that's what they've reported, okay? If we're going to operate off of that as fact, then AOC, no, it was not issued in error. You just don't want to pay your fair share. Really, really bad look for somebody not wanting to pay taxes to the state where she lives when she's running in re-election, trying to challenge this. This is going to be used against her, and it already is because they've already got her primary race opponent calling her out. You know what, man? She really does think she's better than everyone. That's how I see it, in my opinion. She's making 100 plus K a year, like 174 a year in Congress. She's got a luxury DC apartment. She's been accused of all this, that, and whatnot. I know it's politics, so it can get really annoying when people will lie about her, and they do. I really do think Ocasio-Cortez derangement syndrome is real, but it doesn't mean that all criticism of her is wrong. No, she absolutely needs to be criticized. She's done some good things. I've praised her over her stance on, big tech spying and stuff like that. But what we can see here is that in her mind, when other businesses challenge the taxes they owe, they're refusing to pay their fair share. When wealthy individuals say, I shouldn't have to pay this tax for this reason, they're not paying their fair share. But when AOC has a warrant issued against her company because she didn't pay her taxes 7 years ago, she says, no, this clearly must be an error, and then moves to use the same legal process every other business and individual uses to not pay the taxes they don't believe they owe. So why not just pay your fair share, AOC? Well, here's why. Quote, the Congresswoman is still in the process of contesting the tax warrant. The business has been closed for several years now, and so we believe that the state tax department has continued to collect the franchise tax in error, said Lauren Hitt, an AOC spokeswoman. As anyone who's tried to contest a tax bill in error knows, it takes time. Yes, using the legal process to challenge what you don't believe you owe. You don't believe it's fair that the government will tax you this amount of money because your business has been closed for years. Except the bill is 7 years old. So I understand there may be some complexities to the story that I am not aware of. Maybe this bill was smaller 7 years ago. It sounds to me like she's on the hook for this bill because she hasn't paid it in years, so it's going up. You got to pay a penalty when you don't pay your taxes. So if they're arguing the business has been defunct for years, so we don't have this money, they're wrong, at least according to the records published by the New York Post. They go on to say that AOC, a first-term incumbent, will face Democratic voters in the June 23rd primary in the 14th congressional district, covering portions of the Bronx and Queens. She shocked the political world when she toppled ex-congressman and former Queens Democratic Party chairman Joe Crowley in the 2018 Democratic primary. In one of her first moves as a congresswoman in 2019, AOC said taxes on the country's wealthiest should be increased to as much as 70%. Meanwhile, the financial statement of Caruso Cabrera, a former CNBC anchor, has yet to be publicly disclosed. Her campaign spokesman said it was filed Friday, the May 15th deadline. Full disclosure, I donated to her political rival. Mostly this was born out of, I was having a conversation with a friend. I mentioned her on Rogan. I've done several videos about her. And she seems to be like a moderate, like a centrist Democrat, but not a corporate one. Maybe there's some things that I don't agree with her on. And I don't even know how I feel about, look, I really don't want to support the Democrats at all for the most part at this point. But this is different because AOC is so outside the party, hypocritical. And my friend kind of said, put up or shut up. And I was like, all right, I'll put up. So full disclosure, I threw a donation at Caruso Cabrera because she wrote a book about being a sane, rational, moderate. And that to me said a lot because that's what we're missing in politics. So I said, okay, maybe this will be my last foray into this is the kind of person. But also it's a deeply blue district. It's like D plus 28 or whatever. So the Democrats are going to win. The best thing I think for the district would be, a moderate. And I will fully accept welcome criticism. I don't like the idea of giving people money when you don't live in the area. But so I probably shouldn't do that moving forward. But hey, I don't know. I'm just letting you know I did it. Criticize me all you want. Comment, insult me. Maybe I shouldn't have. But I do. I really do like Michele Caruso Cabrera. And I like the fact that someone's going to stand up to AOC and her hypocrisy. Let me give the gist of it, and then I'll show you this quote from her. I just think when it comes to businesses like Amazon saying, our profit is this. Here's the employment taxes we've paid. Here's the, state, security, whatever, social security taxes we've paid. And then when it comes to corporate taxes, they don't because they pay out profits or something and there's no corporate, money left over. People don't understand why Amazon pays no corporate taxes. They ignore all the other taxes paid by the company. If a company says, we made $100 this year, we're going to pay it out to our staff, then they will have zero in their bank and they won't pay taxes because they paid out to their staff. Then you get progressives like this saying they're not paying their fair share because they paid zero in taxes because they don't understand. Then when AOC gets a tax bill, she says, I don't want to pay it. Oh, come on, man. There is no situation for the most part where businesses aren't paying the taxes they owe. That's the important takeaway. If the IRS goes to Amazon and says, you owe $1 billion, guess what Amazon's going to do? They're going to argue why they do or they don't, and then ultimately pay what the determination is. But when Amazon doesn't pay, it's because they don't owe it. That's how the law works. Now, AOC says she wants to increase, taxes on the wealthy. Maybe 70%. She said she wasn't sure. It's fine for her to speculate. And if you want to argue a change to tax law, I don't care. That's fine. That's fair. I don't believe she should be criticized for saying she wants to increase it. I think she should be criticized for not understanding how this works. If Bezos isn't paying taxes, it's because he doesn't owe them. You want to call it not paying the fair share? Fine. But you have to pay what you owe too. Check this out. This is funny. They say at the time, AOC, who is known for supporting higher taxes on the wealthiest Americans, supported doubling tax deductions for small businesses like hers. And there it is. Quote, "You don't really make a profit in your first year," she said in 2012. "To get taxed on top of that is a real whammy." I agree. I completely agree. We need to incentivize and empower new businesses. The state issued a warrant to the company in July of 2017, just 2 months after Ocasio-Cortez declared her candidacy in the Democratic Party. Now she owes, $2,000. She doesn't want to pay it. Man, so funny that when it's her business, she says taxes should be lower for us. When it's the money she owes, she says, I don't actually owe it. I shouldn't have to pay it. I'm going to challenge it. Just pay your fair share, dude, like everybody else. Isn't that the message you espouse? So I can't tell you that I'm surprised to hear that other Democrats are avoiding AOC as they plan coronavirus relief. Now we're going to segue into another story about AOC. So if you're interested in taxes, we're going to move on from that. But I'm going to make this point. She is bombastic. She is hypocritical. So it's no surprise to me that people want to avoid her. She is extremely divisive. She goes on Twitter. She rags on people. She spits and yowls. She is arrogant and narcissistic. Dare I say, she takes after Trump so well. I've called her Mini Lady Trump. They have a lot in common with their attitudes. And what's funny is that people like to rag on Trump for his character and all that. I was just watching the Family Guy episode the other day with Trump in it, where Trump and Peter are arguing. And I actually respect Seth MacFarlane for including this in the episode, where Peter says, you're a potty mouth president and all this stuff. And Trump responds to Peter Griffin saying that, so are you. You're Peter Griffin of Family Guy. All of these kids who have said all of these jokes, all these offensive jokes, they got it from you. Now, of course, they try to deflect and say, yeah, well, you can turn the TV off, the president, blah, blah, blah. That's a really good point, though. The bombastic attitude was not created by Trump. The attitude of AOC, these are symptoms of something else in our society. AOC goes on Twitter and she complains and she's wrong. She's ignorant and hypocritical. You can criticize Trump for his tweets as well, and he tweets memes, and boy, do they spit and yowl. They do not like it. Trump did the meme with Bill Pullman, and people were losing their minds. And I say, imagine inviting these people to a party. Now, AOC does more elitist gloating than Trump does. Trump memes are silly and ridiculous. I got to be honest. Sometimes I'm face palming, I can't believe this man is tweeting these things. And it's funny because his own supporters call him the madman. It's yes. For in mostly a positive way, but also kind of a negative way. Come on. AOC did this tweet after Amazon. Amazon pulls out of New York. The city loses almost 40,000 jobs. Low end 25, high end 4. That's the estimate given by local Democrats. I believe Cuomo himself. So the state loses all these jobs, and AOC led the charge. And then she goes, "Oh no, not me. I had nothing to do with it." You were headlining a protest in the financial district trying to get Amazon booted from the city. Then when Amazon announces a small marketing department with 1,000 jobs, which would have come anyway, she takes a picture of herself gloating in DC in her lobby on her chair. It's wow. Ignorant, narcissistic, and hypocritical. Man, trifecta, hat trick, huh? So it's no surprise when you hear other Democrats don't want to be associated with that. The other Democrats probably trying to have legitimate elections and win and really inspire their constituencies. Not all of them. Nah, not all of them. AOC, not so much. Let's read the story from the New York Post. They say, New York's elected officials are avoiding spotlight-loving firebrand AOC like, the plague, opting to craft their coronavirus response efforts around the lefty lawmaker, insiders tell the Post. Sources gave multiple explanations for why the Queens Bronx Democrat has been largely relegated to the sidelines and her Animal Crossing island rather than in the fray. Now, I'm going to stop here and point out the Animal Crossing thing. Apparently, she was popping into people's islands or whatever, in the game, basically visiting people in the game. And she got criticized for it by a lot of people. And that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. If AOC wants to play a video game, I honestly do not care. Trump goes golfing. AOC plays video games. They're both allowed to do it. can we talk about something legitimate? Complaining about AOC playing Animal Crossing isn't an argument against her ideas. I'm sorry. I just don't care. I really don't. They are not looking to work with her, and they want nothing to do with her, said one source plugged into Empire State Politics, explaining that other polls feared she would outshine them or try to take credit for their work. But another insider said the often outspoken AOC simply rubs many of her fellow New York Democrats the wrong way. She hasn't made many friends in the delegation, said the source, a staffer in another Empire State rep's office. Despite being a nationally known name, AOC was conspicuously absent from the names of New York Democrats highlighted when Governor Cuomo and Brooklyn Queens Rep Hakeem Jeffries teamed up to bring COVID testing to churches, or when Cuomo called on lawmakers to support legislation protecting laid-off workers. Yes, because she doesn't represent the district. She represents Twitter. And that's what people need to realize. She could potentially win in the primary and defeat Caruso Cabrera because she has 6+ million followers and she is Twitter famous. She might light up just enough people to win. The only reason she's in office is because 17,000 people came out in her district of 750,000 and voted for her. If Michele Caruso Cabrera actually speaks to the district and not to Twitter, which it seems like she's trying to do, she might wipe the floor with AOC. You know what, man? I don't live in the district. AOC is just high profile, so I really don't like the idea of outsiders meddling. And I'll be honest, again, criticize me for the donation I made. I get it. You know, I was thinking about it. It was kind of an impulse. But AOC doesn't represent that district. She doesn't speak to the people. She's not often there. She's been criticized for filming videos in her DC apartment when people in her district are suffering. I believe she deserves respect for the things she's done. She's tried. There's photos of her. She's out working with people in her community trying to do what's right. But I don't believe she actually cares about her district. I think she's doing it because she likes being famous. Think about it this way. AOC recently abandoned, for the most part, the cause of upsetting the Democratic Party. The Justice Democrats are over. She's now endorsing more mainstream Democrats. She's promoting progressives who are targeting Republicans. She's really fallen in line behind Pelosi, and I'll tell you why. It's because she knows she's on track to lose. She knows the mainstream Democrats will wipe out her district. They will primary her. They are doing it. She is poised to be removed because she is the Twitter candidate. The support she gets, the donations she gets do not come from her district for the most part. We've seen the numbers. Or I should clarify that. Many of her large contributions, the ones she has to report, come from outside her district. She represents the vocal minority of Twitter. They've put her in federal office for making decisions for the country, but she got elected for a district in New York, which she is supposed to represent. Speak on their behalf. She likely does not. She speaks towards progressives, and we've seen what happened to most of these progressives across the board. She won, I think, because Joe Crowley underestimated her. That was the guy who was running as an incumbent. He should have taken it seriously. He should have rallied support, and she got just enough to squeak by. And because it's a D plus 27 or 28 district, she was guaranteed the win. Let's see how she does going up against a real contender. Michele Caruso Cabrera actually challenged AOC to debate. Apparently, AOC hasn't answered. And she even said I think she wants to do 2 of them in Spanish. Michele Caruso Cabrera, another 3 named individual, very similar, Latina, professional, CNBC. I think AOC knows that she's facing a regular Democrat. I think that AOC knows the people of her district do not want a radical. They want someone to work on their behalf. But what does she do all day? She complains. She cost them jobs. She may not even be able to win. Some speculate she's preparing a primary run against Cuomo. Against Chuck Schumer, not Cuomo. He's the governor. A primary run against Schumer, but I believe she would absolutely lose in that regard as well. She is the Twitter candidate. I'm sorry. She does not represent the state, the district. The way I've explained it before is imagine this. Let's say you have 10 cities of 100 people, and you need, let's say you need 20 votes to win, because most people don't vote, right? So AOC is in her district, and she gets a bunch of support from all of the other cities, which gives her funding in her city, as opposed to the other candidate who is actually trying to raise money from the people in their city. You see, AOC has ignited the progressives across the country. The people who follow her on Twitter are people around the country. Probably in New York City, a lot of them. Probably in Los Angeles, Chicago, Austin, Seattle, Portland. These other big cities. Does she really have 6 million people in New York following her? No, of course not. That would be like more than half of the city. In Manhattan or the Bronx and Harlem, her district is 750,000 people. I'd be willing to bet she has a tiny, tiny fraction. Tiny, tiny fraction. 750,000. 2% of this country are active Twitter users. And I don't even think she has that many. Like, that would be like every active Twitter user in the Bronx following her. No. I think there's strong potential for her to be removed in June. We'll see, though. I'm not convinced she'll run against Schumer. Maybe she'll come back and do it. Maybe she'll try something in 2024. She could theoretically run for president. I don't think she'll try that either. Her career may be over. And I think she's trying to pony up to Pelosi because she knows what happens if she doesn't win this primary. She might. It might be a landslide. But what happens if she doesn't win? What does she become? What is her legacy? A one-hit wonder who came in that one time, got nothing done, sided with Trump, believe it or not, more often than most of the Democrats, inadvertently for different reasons, but still a very weird legacy. Does she want that? No, I think she's an egotist, and I think she wants to be this, sitting there with her big glasses going like, excuse me, yelling at people in these congressional hearings. That's what she wants. She's about to lose that unless she plays ball. We'll see how things play out. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at timcast.net. Check it out. Timcast.net. It's my main YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, and I will see you all there.